So now I'm going to talk to you about a very important idea. And this is, how do you handle the actual move sequences, the aggressive move sequences that your opponent can come up with. This is not an easy thing to do, and one of the reasons is because people constantly play different things. But what I'm going to show you are a couple great ways on how you can do this very successfully. So let's actually take a look and see what it's all about. After the moves of c4, knight f6, knight c3, e5, knight f3, and then knight at the c6. Basically, the idea is that now white can play the move of pawn to the g3. And so now we're going to see, actually, this is an exercise from a game between Garry Kasparov and Vasily Ivanchuk. This game was played in Moscow in 1988 and became a really magnificent game. It was a brilliant game. It had a lot of value to it that I'd like to bring. So okay, after g3, just as it happened, black played with the move of bishop to the g4. Okay, so that's what he came up with. And then after that, white played with bishop to the g2. So essentially, black plays short castles, and then this move. So it was an easy development. Now after that, essentially, white plays with knight g5. And now you see what happens when people really push in with moves like e4 and such. It's not a bad thing. I mean, a move like pawn up to the e4 feels like a very natural type of idea. But the reality is that a move of that kind has a major, or within itself, it's got a major problem. It's too quick. It's too early. And because of that, because it's too quick and because it is too early, it's usually not going to work. So what do we do when basically that type of move happens? Okay, so after knight at the g5, this is very interesting. The thing that black has to do, obviously, is to continue with bishop takes to the c3 and b takes to the c. The flexibility that white is able to apply in this position. It is not about tactics, and it is certainly not about anything else. We just want to get the flexible pieces and make sure that they're in position to challenge the opponent. So we're kind of letting him to push himself forward. Now after b takes the c3, black plays rook to the e8 in order to just defend. And that made a lot of sense to do. So he's actually considering that this pawn is supposed to give him an advantage. But it's actually not an advantage. It is very different than that. For example, after black played with the move of rook to the e8, white plays f3. And that was excellent. It's a really great move, for one, because now in case black actually exchanges it, then we could see that there will be bishop takes f3, so it really does not include anything that will help black after the exchange or recapture. And then the other valuable thing that we get to see is the impossibility. Like, he really doesn't get to do too much. For instance, next move, after f3, when black captures with e takes f3, which is like the only good thing that he can make, white has the simple and yet very effective idea of playing the move of the e takes f, knight takes f3. There's nothing. Now we realize the value of this move. So for example, actually after the move of knight takes to the f3, as black continues with d5, white goes d4. Now the bishop pair advantage is probably the most important thing that white cares about. And it is a valuable thing, indeed. It is something that we care about more than anything else. But what's really the most necessary is to take the chance and build towards the center. See, this is where it really goes to. So just like white is able to very effectively build his whole development and everything else towards the middle. The key is always bring your pieces towards the middle, because then you can actually do a lot of things with that. You can achieve a lot of possibilities. So now white is becoming very successful. Let's take a look and see what happens. d4. Black played the move of knight e4. Now, this was probably, I wouldn't say it was one of the best moves by Black, but as you can see, it's all a big provocation. We are letting the opponent to literally move forward and start advancing, because we know that this is actually not going to help him. All those tactical sequences and everything else that he's trying, they're really not that important. Why? Because it doesn't matter. Even when he does this, he's still behind. He's still feeling a little bit backsided, and this whole sequence just really, doesn't fit. So what does White do? Well, after the move of knight to the e4, so actually what White plays is the move of queen to the c2. And what we get to see is that you can continue with White can play now with knight e5, bishop f4, and knight to the e5, and there's so much out there. So number one, do not rush. In most of the main lines out there, you do not want to rush. See, c takes d would have allowed knight takes the c3 and some sort of complications that White's just not, he doesn't want to go there. But with that type of move, it is slightly different. So actually, when we do it this way with the move of queen to the c2, Black now has to continue with d takes the c. And this was the moment where Kasparov, even here, at a situation where you would say, alright, he's got to do something, right? He's got to be fast in one way or another. Even then, it doesn't come. This is very important. We're not playing it that way. We just want to take the possibility and keep improving our pieces, one after the other. We got the rook from the b1, that's actually quite good. We have the extra pressure against b7. We can have the moves like bishop to the f4 and everything. So step by step, things are actually going to work out quite great. This is good. So what comes out next after that? Well, after that move, basically Black played with the move of pawn to the f5, and then White does g4. In fact, all that seemingly passive development that took place really isn't. This is very, very important. It is what I would call consistent. Yes, solid. Absolutely. But the most valuable thing that it is that this is a very efficient way for White to actually get all these squares, all those important pieces, and start building towards that. So little by little, things are going to work out greatly. So just when you break through, it doesn't feel out of nowhere. It actually feels very consistent. And so look at how White does it. Queen e7. And you probably are wondering, why did Black just not take the pawn? Well, he didn't because of knight e5. He's just not ready to handle all these sequences, all these tactical sequences taking place after knight takes to the e4. Now we're going to have the attack going against h7. Black can go right back with his knight on the g6, but then White can do bishop takes to the g6, queen takes to the g6, which looks pretty good. And that's just wonderful. I mean, the whole idea is wonderful in that position. Every single attack feels prepared, ready, and well set out to help. So then Black can do queen e7, and now White plays rook b5. There, queen h5. I mean, this didn't happen really in the game. Of course, Black was smarter than that. He played queen e7 before any of this. But essentially, right after the move of queen to the e7, White just played g takes f, and this actually feels great. Because pretty much right after g takes f, in case Black plays bishop takes f, once again, this is a great example of seeing why the badly prepared pieces of someone actually are not going to do anything. So now we have this possibility to attack the knight. If he captures that knight, we got queen takes f5, we have the g5 under a threat, we get the f5 available to, the f file available to keep him under pressure. Maybe even our light square bishop can come through forward down to the d5. This is great. It's a really, really good candidate. So one of the really smart and really interesting ideas is to think about how you could set your pieces, get them close, and move to threaten your opponent. It was greatly played. Beautiful and wonderful. So, okay, Black played knight to d6, and that was basically the end of it. Because as a result of all these sequences, basically Black loses. Why? He loses because of all the extra problems that are going to be there, that are going to actually happen. He doesn't have the ability to really make anything, like good or threatening or whatever. And so it's bad. Like, so after bishop to the d5, Black plays with king to the h8 in this position, but it's really not that important after all, because when he actually does go for the move of like king to the h8 as it is at the moment, we have everything. Space is good, control is excellent, everything just feels perfectly in place. And so after queen takes to the e2 and then bishop f4, you can realize the fantastical endgame that White is able to keep with more or less every single one of his pieces. It's brilliant, which is something I cannot say for Black. There's an exchange, rook e1, and so on and so forth. So what are some of the most important qualities, so to speak, of this game? What are some of the most valuable ideas? Now, the first thing that I'd like to actually mention is going back to, here we go. Going back to the earliest stage. Number 1. After c4, knight c3, you realize the flexibility. Let your opponent make the mistakes. This is very important. Do not push him. Do not try to force the position. Just keep it there and then let the opponent to weaken himself. That's what exactly happened after all this. f3, exchange, d4, and everything that really went through with that. This is going to often help you a lot because people do hurry. And when they do rush the position, you could simply let them to create more weaknesses and bigger problems to themselves. That helped White brilliantly. Another interesting thing happens with the next game. This was a game that was played between Shahryar Mamedyarov and his opponent, whose name was Al Debrake. This was played in 2004, two very strong masters, so let's take a look and really see what really happened in that game. So, basically, after c4, e5, knight to the c3, knight f6, and essentially White played with the move of knight to the f3, knight c6, and pawn to g3. So basically what we're seeing here is that White has this easy development. He doesn't have to worry about anything. He has a straightforward command, nice shot for each piece. So it all looks really good. Black played bishop b4, bishop g2, castles, exchange, and then b takes to the c. Now I gotta say, d takes to the c and bishop g5 is probably alright too, but I don't think it works out all too well. See, what White wanted to do was just to take with b takes to the c and probably focus on the b file or maybe some of the other lines available. Rook b1 may be great, d4 or even d3. This actually looks good. So, again, we let Black to mess it up. Very important idea. Do not engage first. That's often meant in every possible way when you're playing this opening. Just give yourself the chance to let him mess it up. After that, basically Black played with the move of d6, and now White plays d3. Yeah, actually if you think of it, taking the time to really build up a solid, strong center is something incredibly important, and we realize why. White's going to have moves like pawn up to the e4 coming up next very quickly. He is going to have moves like h3 or rook b1. You're creating structure. You're making your formation work for you. Now that is usually not easy. but this is exactly what you want to do. Just take your time and build that. This is good. Of course, after that move, Black has plenty of things to worry about. I mean, he didn't like it. So what he did, actually, was the candidate of. Okay, so let's take a look and see what happened. The D3, Black played with the move pawn up to the H6 in this position. Yeah, it makes sense. As a matter of fact, he's definitely looking for a way to prevent that bishop from reaching out for a G5. So it makes a good sense for Black to play just like that. Okay. Good job. That Black is actually trying very much to stop White from attacking. Okay, it made good sense. And so after H6, White plays Rook B1. It's quite interesting. Nothing else actually. No goal is more important than White's opportunity to build onto the queen's side. That is everything White is looking for, and he's actually looking at it in the right way. He's looking at it through the right magnifying glass, so to speak. It's just slow, consistent position and possibilities. It looks great. Now, with that in mind, obviously Black's got much more to worry about, so he actually played with Rook to the B8. He did that in order to, I suppose, just keep everything covered and protected. Looks good. Then White plays H3. See the small pawn moves. Now again, as I mentioned earlier, the scores in the English is about the practical aspects of the opening that many other books and videos leave behind. Those little things that you have to consider as a part of your strategy whenever you're choosing to play this opening. A move like H3 does that perfectly. It shows the value of such a move. That now we've covered the G4 square. We're not letting the Black bishop to come out. We have most of what I would call strength and power available and against Black. I wouldn't say that he's got as much. H3. You also see something interesting, that White does this slowly. Yeah, like do not hurry, literally. Give yourself the time. Moves like A4 help out a lot too. You can see now the reason. Now we've covered moves like B5 and others that Black would eventually want to do. And so given that he cannot make those type of moves, he's got an extra problem in this position. So step by step, we're really taking on the possibility to restrict him, to keep him back and away. So after A4, Black played with a move of bishop to the E6 in this position, and then White plays alongside E4. It's a great candidate move. Strong setup. We take away the squares like D5 and others that we actually wanted to control, so he doesn't get to move anywhere much, and we go from there. Step by step. E4 was great, wonderful candidate. Black plays now with knight h7. Not a great move, but really I just don't believe that there is much more he can do. And that's the moment where White plays knight h4. All those pawns help you in one very specific aspect. The opportunity to take control, to gain space. That's what White is able to do beautifully right now. He doesn't care about tactics or other things. He just wants to know, do I get the chance to control as much space that I want, or do I not? If it is, that's all you care about. If it doesn't, well, that's too sad. See, so right now we got the square of h5 that we're actually, f5 that we're controlling, and almost everything else with it. So step by step, it looks good. And I do not believe that Black was feeling really too well about this position, so he played queen d7. So you might want to actually pause and think a little bit, what should White try? It's a good position, of good control. Black is a little behind and backward, so what should be the best way to go? Essentially, it was g4. All about that move. Because, in fact, after the move of pawn up to the g4, what we're seeing is that now Black is kind of unable to actually move down, so he cannot play with moves like f5 or anything. We can concentrate on playing with the move of knight to the a5 on our own, and that's the way. It's wonderful. It's a great step up. It helps us to prevent black from actually pushing or reaching down. And then we can have moves like knight at f5 and others. So this is great. Black played knight a5. So what do we do next? How do we advance in this type of position? Do we break through? Do we open? Do we just give ourselves the time to simply develop? Or do we do something else? That is a really wonderful question. So let's think a little bit about that for a second. I mean, like, what should be White's best opportunity here? The best opportunity for White is simply to continue the development. That's all we'd like to do. It's never about anything else. Let's carry on, make those pieces come out even better, even stronger, and then after c5, White played with the move of knight to the f5. This is a great direction. We have a nice possibility to challenge against the g7, and we have the opportunity to keep him backward. So that's it. See, what White was doing is gain space. One of the most successful ideas in any opening is the concept of gaining space, because if you can get enough space for the action of each piece you have, you will be able to achieve miracles with it. But it takes time to do it. It's not an easy thing, and it's not a simple idea. It takes a lot of consistency and persistence to achieve it. And so it was actually quite interesting. Let's take a look and see. After that knight f5 move, black played b6 and f4. Usually you get space by simply transferring your pieces onto better positions. This is not something you can do very easily, but you can do it nonetheless, like what White is able to achieve with pawn to the f4 right now. Just get that space on the line. Perfect example, no complications, things are clear. If he exchanges, we're ready to retake with our bishop, and we can even get to attack him on the f-file. It's all there is to it. f6, h4. In fact, White went even further than that, trying to now navigate his other pawn through the play. It's crazy. You could say, all right, this is Valeri, this is horrible. I don't want to be actually pushing up all that much. It just looks like it's going to just make us to go in a very risky position, a risky situation. Maybe it would. But the truth is that we don't risk actually all that much. If you really think about this, for the most part now, White just keeps going. In this moment, he played knight takes h6 and f5, which is the culmination of what I would call, like the final point of break. Like the breaking point comes here because we basically tear down the whole black's defense, regaining the bishop and seeing what this is all about. Like, why did we really do it in the first place? It was because of that, because we had the preparation, we had the means, we had the power, and we had the opportunity, and it was great. I love this game because it shows one of the key goals of this opening. And one of the key goals of this opening is, can you take the space that is most necessary so that your attack is going to work? If the answer to that question is yes, I can, nothing else matters. That is really the truth. Gain the space, get the control, and you're good to go. It's perfect. Let's take a look at another example which shows us some of the subtleties of this opening and the typical positions. For example, here's a game that was played between Joel Lautier and Boog Xianji. This was a game that was played in 2004. White did the move of knight d5. Now this is a bit unnatural and a bit unnerving, actually, I like to say too. I mean, we realize that the knight is jumping forward, and then we start worrying, okay, is this really like the right way to go? I mean, it feels a little too quick. So, how do we know? Well, here's the idea. So actually, if when we play with the move of knight of the d5, the idea is we let the opponent to sort of exchange it if we want to, and then we can capture. We can attack the opponent's knight, we can hit his own pawn on the e5, and it is a wonderful idea. Let him do it. Let him actually force all these trades or exchanges or whatever he wants, because then you'll be very successful. As a result of all these shifts, then he's going to create some brilliant weaknesses you can exploit in his position. That's what we want, and that's what we're doing, really. This is the whole idea. Step by step. Now, after the move of knight of the d5, apparently Black's got many things to be worried about. So he actually did bishop c5. He did not want to lose the center pawn. I mean, who would? Truth is, he couldn't allow that. So he moves right back, and this is the time where White plays, okay, after bishop c5, d3. Slow, consistent, and ready. Really, if you think about that. White's got everything perfect. His knight's great. Rest of his pieces also feel pretty good. The bishop on the g2 is going to be quite nice. And let's see. So d3. Now what goes next in the position? So after the move of d3, and of course White's ready to play with bishop to the g5. That makes a lot of sense. Black's f6 knight and everything is going to be bad. And actually, let's take a look and see. Here, Black plays h6, a3, and a5. It makes a lot of sense actually to think about this position because it's a pretty interesting example. Like, so Black is just trying to block White from being able to play b4, and it seems like he's actually doing it pretty well. So how are we supposed to advance or attack right now? Should we do it? Well, not immediately, not right now. We should attack. Apparently, we should try and deliver more threats, but we have to do this in a careful manner. We certainly do not want to engage into some tactics or whatever early on. This is a big thing. So what's actually happening in this position is that after a5, this is the moment where White plays bishop g2 and e3. See, even though we did the move of knight at the d5, White did not start with those type of tactics out there. So this is quite important. Then after that, knight e3, we see White's still ready to prepare. He just made an extra move that was useful, but nothing more. It's not engaging. White hasn't really started to attack just yet. Let's give ourselves a little more time to build the position, and then eventually we'll go from there. This is very interesting. So what's coming next? I mean, after the move of e3, Black played with d6, short castles, and knight takes d5. I wouldn't really say that this was a great move for Black. I think that he just wanted to exchange as many pieces as he could, just to make sure that White's knight loses its power and everything. And that was a good idea. It seems to work. So White takes, of course, back. Knight e7, and now d4. Perfect. So what does White really want to achieve in this position? It's pretty clear. Space. I've already talked about this, but again, I'm going to repeat it because it is such an important quality. Space is everything. You get it by advancing your pawns and pieces onto more, powerful, challenging positions against your opponent. What's d4 does exactly this now. So Black has to take it, of course, and then White has knight x to the d4 coming for himself. He's got that bishop that is already in line with what White wants to do. There is the restriction against the Black c pawn in case he actually tries to attempt something, and we have a great position. Step by step, things start to look better. Well, actually, that was a great move. And of course, it's not everything, but this is a great start for White. Well, after that, Black played after knight x to the d4, Black did knight to the g6, and then it was b3. And it's good. Yes, step by step. The bishop is coming out in b2 in any of the next moves, so white has just the perfect amount of time to finish his development. Why not? It is all we care about, isn't it? So after b3, black played bishop to the d7 himself, and this is the moment where white plays h3. Using the same concept from before, the small pawn moves provide what I would call the necessary limitations, the necessary restrictions against the opponent's position. And it is beautiful. Great way to follow. Very little that black can do, even in terms of setting up his own pieces against our position, so that's quite good. And given that he can't have bishop to the g4 or any of those type of moves, now white is ready to finally finish up the development, get the bishop out, and okay, so we've got to control the diagonal. We have the queen coming out as well. This is good. I like to say that. It's very, very good to see. So what happens next? Black played a4. Of course, strong attempt to open up and provide some opportunities for those pawns and ways and a way to go. This is interesting. Okay, I'm not going to say that it's good or bad. It's just interesting to play. Okay, so now with that move, white just played alongside b4. Rook c1 and king h2. He has the ability to cover the h2 pawn, h3 pawn. He has the opportunity to stabilize, maybe think about rook to the e1 and possibly e4, and he is doing it right. Black played rook a to the c8, going on for an idea of maybe advancing c6 or whatever he actually wanted to do out there. Didn't matter, because really, I mean, truth is, it doesn't. White plays rook e1, getting himself up, prepared, possibly with an idea to advance with e4. Feels great. And look at the opening. Forget the rest. Just look at the opening that white's got. Almost everything's out there for him. Space, command, more possibilities, great bishops, wonderful development. That's all you want out of the English opening. So you see, this is how you like to be thinking about being able to arrange and manage your pieces from the very start of the game. Now let's take a look at some other examples that will make you more successful within this opening.